Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Books with Nate. And today I'm going to be doing another review for you of Midnight Tides by Steven Erikson. This is the fifth book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is my. I'm currently back home in Wisconsin, and this is my library's copy, and they had a hardcover, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so I'm doing another review of this. I feel like this is slowly turning into a Malazan channel, but we'll see. I don't know. I love this series so far, but yeah, this is kind of all over the place right now. Apologies for not uploading in a while. I've been doing a lot of traveling, weddings and summer vacation stuff. That's why I'm back here. I'm doing some family vacation with my family back here in Wisconsin. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to recently. But hoping to get back into some more consistent videos. We'll see. Ideally, that's the plan. So anyways, let's get into the review. I'll be doing non-spoilers at the beginning and then eventually getting into spoilers. I kind of decided to do this off the cuff. I was going to try and take some more time with it, but I finished this last week and I didn't know if I was going to record a video or not, but now I finally am. So apologies for any, just if I seem like I'm going crazy, it's probably because I am. This has been I've thought about this book quite a lot. So let's just get into it. So this is the fifth tale in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. It takes place mostly just before Gardens of the Moon, as well as some scenes from hundreds of thousands of years prior to the events of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. It's mostly a story of two sets of brothers, one of the Tisti Eater and one of the Lethiri, and it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy set in a fantasy world. Steven Erikson said it himself, this is not your typical fantasy work, it's more so a tragedy than it is a fantasy book, and you can definitely see that a lot. It's heavy hitting in a lot of ways. The story follows, an empire with really any lack of self-awareness, and it's coming up against a people who are trying their best to essentially preserve their way of life and defend themselves, but neither are really in the right. I think he does a great job of presenting, how power can corrupt, and that isn't getting into any spoilers because power is a big theme throughout this series. So yeah, I just think he did that really well, and I'll get more into the themes in a sec. So we see themes of betrayal, brotherhood, imperialism, colonialism, truth, and I think these were handled really well in regards to the characters and the story that takes place around them. We're again in a completely new setting, surprise, surprise. But I think if you take it from a standpoint of there's something bigger than just the characters, which I think is something that Malazan sets out to do, I think you'll really enjoy it, because I'm a themes guy for sure. This series has turned me into a themes person, and I think if you're able to look at it that way, I think you'll really enjoy the book Midnight Tides and the series. But especially if you're in the middle of the series right now, I think you'll really enjoy seeing these themes kind of come through these characters and the story. The characters are very aware of these themes, maybe not in the meta sense, but just in terms of noticing what's going on. And, speaking of characters, I loved these characters. It definitely took me time to get into. Let's say the first 150 pages or so, I struggled, but the story started to pick up around then. And, just speaking of characters some more, we're getting the POVs of what I guess you consider, outside observers to events versus decision makers, for the most part. It's very similar, I remembered, to Duaker in Dead House Gates, being the imperial historian. He's not really making decisions, but he's witnessing stuff and events, and I think that's something that I really enjoyed in this book as well, because you're getting the characters' emotions and feelings of somebody who's doesn't really have any power themselves, but they're taking, place. They're being a part of these huge events and witnessing these, immense, forms of power and, and violence as well, ultimately. I just think that was handled really well again in this book. Again, it took time to get into, but overall, I really just enjoyed that aspect of it. And just a little bit more on characters specifically, I really like Taeho and Bug. And then also the Sengar brothers themselves. I think their story was fascinating. I'll get more into that in the spoilers. But this is a great book. I gave it 4.75 out of 5. Right now it's not my favorite Malazan book, but I'm sure it will be. So, it's my second highest rated, but I think this was a great entry again. I'm really excited to get into the Bone Hunters. I'm currently reading Night of Knives, which takes place between Midnight Tides and the Bone Hunters. But yeah, I'm excited to continue the Malazan series. Now I want to get into spoilers a bit, and this is going to be a bit kind of all over the place, so please forgive me. I just want to talk about Brulad for a second. What a tragic character. I know he's not maybe the... how do I put this? He's not the best person in the world, especially when, growing up. He's kind of trying to be his brothers, but he doesn't really, he's unblooded. He's trying to live up to them. They kind of keep putting him down. He's not really, like, a good person either, objectively. Like, he doesn't do anything objectively bad, but he's just kind of, like, weird. And, I think what happens to him when he picks up the sword and eventually starts to serve the crippled god, and just sort of how his arc goes, it's so just tragic. And just seeing how he is killed and then is reborn, and that's how he gets more powerful, but he has to, like, die each time. And I love how Erikson focuses on that, on death, and it's not something that's just thrown away or it's like looked on positively, like being able to become more powerful through death. I think just how he was handling that, it really struck me in a lot of ways. And his relationship with Udanas, I believe it's how you pronounce it, how he needed Udanas to kind of be his, like, therapist almost, but he was his slave. And Udanas not just kind of realizing that, I guess. His arc just really impacted me a lot, and it was just really tragic, I think, to see him from his brother's perspective, especially. I think Troll and Fear kind of do two different sides to the coin of Rulad in terms of how he becomes the Emperor. Both kind of having different opinions. They both kind of agree that, like, this is bad, but Fear goes along with it because what else is he supposed to do, versus Troll, who goes along with it, but he has his reservations and his doubts, and it eventually leads to his betrayal that we don't really witness. We just see the end of it at the beginning of House of Chains. I just love seeing those characters interact, and I'm a younger brother of just my older brother, but, like, I can understand in a way wanting to live up to your older brother or your older sibling. And it's just, I really felt for Rulad, and I don't agree with everything that he did, but I can understand it. And just some more tragic characters. Kettle, it was so sad reading her parts, not because she eventually becomes alive again, but I remember reading when she could feel a heartbeat again, and that really struck me a lot too, because she's this undead sort of person who has no memory of her past, and she slowly is piecing it together, but she's actually a vessel for I believe a Forkul Sail, who is an unnamed one. Maybe the Forkul Sail is the one that we interact with later in the book. I don't know, to be honest, but just reading her parts, and it's just this like young girl who has no family, but kind of names these other people her family, and is this guardian of the Azath house. It's just like, God, more tragedy. This book really took the emotional toll on me. I didn't necessarily cry like in some other books, but you just feel it. You feel it in here, and it was just really well done. And then on to some funny characters, Taehol and Buck. What a duo. I loved reading their parts. I did get a little... The Lotheris scenes, the city of Lotheris, those scenes got to be a little much in terms of like the absurdity versus the backdrop of this tragedy. But, I loved it for the most part. And I think Bug revealing himself to be, I forget the name of the god, but male, at the end, and Taehol is like, oh, so you've been a god this whole time? Bug's like, yeah, but, I go by Bug. And Taehol's like, okay, good. I don't want to call you male anyways. And he just keeps treating him like a manservant. I think that's great. And when Bug, at the end of the book, comes out of the water to go beat the crippled god senseless, I was like, fuck yeah, that was so cool. This book was like awesome, to put it in that way. I think it was pretty awesome. That whole cast in that city, one of the captain's brothers, I believe, I forget his name, the one that was killed by his brother, just wanting to be like a vampire, and putting fake teeth in his mouth and getting fake wings or whatever and wanting to come out of the coffin. That was great to read. I loved every second of that. Just all those characters were so unique and just funny and kind of had their own bit of tragedy in a way, but like just kind of looked at it in a more light-hearted manner, especially against the backdrop of a city like Lotheris, where, it's like capitalism galore, and this idea of debt and just everything that goes along with that, especially today is, June 30th. So, some stuff just went on in the United States in regards to debt. So just thinking about that today is kind of interesting, but I just really loved that whole cast of characters in the city. I think it was really well thought out. I think we're supposed to see it again in the future, but we'll see. I also love seeing just how scary the Forkul Assail are. They just seem pretty intense, and running into Iron Bars and his sort of crew from the Crimson Guard. Cool to see them, and the Avowed, and why the Crimson Guard are this kind of feared group. We don't really know about that until now when we see the Crimson Guard kind of doing their thing. Just a few of them, but they're pretty badass, and I'm excited to read The Return of the Crimson Guard and potentially Assail, because they mentioned Assail in this book as well, and that they were fleeing Assail, so we'll see what goes on with them, but it was really cool to read their parts. I also love the demons. The demons pissing down the hole towards the Forkul Sail. That was really hilarious. Yeah, they were awesome. And some of the demons that serve the Tisti Eater, just that idea of the Tisti Andi being these wraiths for them, kind of how they're tied to the Tisti Eater, especially in relation to the prologue, which, by the way, one of the best prologues I've ever read. That was such a good prologue. I think that's just some of the best writing in general I've seen, especially in the theme of betrayal. They were allies, and then Silchus Ruin, or somebody, Scavendari Bloodeye, he betrayed the Tisti Andi, and that was pretty tragic in itself. Again, this is all rambling thoughts, so forgive me, but yeah, this book was just hit after hit after hit of just really solid writing. So good job, Steven Erikson. Also, just a few more things on themes. I think imperialism and colonialism and betrayal and all that stuff that really struck me in this book yet again, especially with the theory and the Tista Eater empire. Who's in the wrong here? At first you're kind of like, the theory are horrible. They put native cultures in debt and then essentially take them over, very similar to like British Empire, American Empire, and this idea of economic imperialism, I think is very interesting. But the Tista Eater as well, like what they do to defend themselves, especially in my first video about this, I thought that the witch, what's his name? Oh, jeez. I just want to say like the Witch King or something. Let's just call him the Witch King for now. First, I was kind of a little forgiving of him. I didn't really notice his own personal ambition with this all going on. I didn't know maybe I just missed it, but he was, hanging out with a crippled god, which is pretty bad. So at first I was kind of forgiving of him for wanting to defend his people, but now seeing what he became, what he wanted to do, fuck that guy. Yeah, so it's like, are the Tista Eater in the right really either? They're, using these old gods to essentially, and forgetting their names, and I think the theme of memory as well. Anyways, sidetrack. That kind of all comes into play in terms of their own imperial ambition to defend themselves, and they just kind of become an empire reborn. Are they much different from the theory? The magic they use is devastating, and it sort of, you feel for the theory soldiers themselves because they don't really get to fight back. They're just kind of forgotten almost. It's a tragedy, it's again a tragedy, and I really love this book. And yeah, so in conclusion, again, I gave this book a 4.75 out of 5. I'm not going to go on much longer because my brain is all over the place. Please, subscribe, leave a like, a comment. Have you read the Malazan book The Fallen yet? If so, why do you like it? Why don't you like it? So yeah, feel free to let me know what you think, and I will talk to you soon.